today we kind of got a slight comparison, but we're going to switch things up a little bit and talk a little bit more about my S1000, BMW S1000RR. It's a 2015. I've had this bike for 3 years, and it's kind of like a 3-year review, was based also with the kind of miles that I have, and now also with the new member here in the family, the Ducati. How does she compare to some things? How does she compare to riding? You know, overall seat position and things like that, because I know a lot of people, you know, pretty much compare these two bikes to the RSV4, excuse me, and a few other bikes in the segment, but those are pretty much the top 3 of the higher end bikes that from the crotch rocket territory that you're going to pretty much compare them to. However, but I don't really want to focus so much on the other bikes. I really want to focus a lot more on this bike. And I want to give you guys a quick synopsis of what my take is on owning this thing after 3 years, why I didn't sell it or trade it for the Ducati, and why I decided to keep both. So let's jump right into it. So why did I decide to keep both? Well, let's just say, shit, why not, you know? Why not, you know? Why have another one? Why have, you know, more than one bike? You can only ride one at one time. Well, because you can never have too many toys. So let's just get that shit out of the way right now. But no, realistically, I couldn't really so much part with this bike. Overall, still in my opinion, because it's not really a fair comparison between the two. So as of right now, and I know for sure, this bike is significantly faster, even on the stock wheelbase, than this bike, based off of its mods and the engine work and stuff that I've already done to this bike. So as far as race and speed factor and everything like that, it's no comparison. I know the S1000 will walk all over my Panigale V4 in a straight line. But that's not, again, why I bought the bike. And, you know, kind of asked, why did you buy a slower bike? This, that. Well, it's not about all the speed, because if I want to go fast, I'll ride this. Or if I want to really go fast, I'll build a turbo booster or something, some drag bike that's designed to go wicked fast. But I bought that bike, you know, because I love the way it looks, and I always wanted a Ducati. I mean, look at it. The thing is freaking gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's not so much about the comparison, and and I said in my other video, there's a lot of other things that I think that this bike does a hell of a lot better than this bike, you know, as riding around or seat position and, you know, things like that. So if you really want a more in-depth review on that one, check out my other video that I posted about that, and you'll probably get a lot of your questions answered. Jumping back onto this bike. This bike now, I bought brand new 2015 when the new generation came out after the first HP4. This is the second gen S1000RR. I've had it for 3 years, and I've only really had maybe 1 or 2 things really go wrong with it. It had a recall once for the quick shifter. That was fixed by BMW. They came and picked it up and did their thing and brought it back. It's got a 3-year unlimited mile warranty, I think, or 3-year 36,000 mile warranty. It doesn't matter. This bike currently has 7,500 miles. I've gone through 2 sets of tires. The original soft compound tires wore out pretty quick, so I did indeed put some dual compounds on there because I was riding it a lot on the street. So the center wouldn't wear out as fast, but still had that nice soft compound for the curves when I like to drag my knee. Yes, I drag my knee on this bike all the time, on ramps, off ramps, around the racetrack, whatever it may be. And it does it very well. It's very stable. No complaints whatsoever. A knee comparison and dragging knee comparison between the two, that's to come up soon. The other thing that broke on this bike in the 3 years was the throttle lever here. This bike is drive-by-wire, so something in the mechanism here with the sensor, the variable resistor that controls the throttle bodies, that did decide to take a shit one day about 1.5 years ago. Called BMW, they came to pick it up, put a new one on there, no problem. So again, that's also the beauty about owning a little bit higher end bike, is that they'll come and pick your bike up and service it for you, of course at no charge. If it breaks down, it gets a flat, I get a loaner, you know, so on and so forth, all about that. I'm pretty sure the Ducati will do that as well. Other than that, realistically, I really haven't had many other issues besides like dumb stupidity things where like the batteries died because I intentionally left the lights on or something like that, but that's not the bike's fault. That's my own fault. As you can see, obviously some of the aesthetic mods, you know, the mirror deletes, the double bubble, the windshield, the lights, you know, undertail kits. You know, a lot of things have been shaved, stickers have been taken off, but it's got a little bit of engine work. You know, it's full exhaust, you know, power commander, so forth. I'm not going to go into all of that, but other than that, the bike has been pretty much solid for all 7,500 miles. I have no complaints at all. Chain wears perfectly, no chipped teeth. Train hasn't stretched too much, as many wheelies as I've done. You know, with power wheelies or clutch wheelies, we know that kind of puts a lot of pressure here on a chain to stretch, and it's overall pretty well. Stock chain, still, I believe it's 530 on this bike. I don't think it's 535. I think it's 530. Don't quote me on that. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. But it's holding up well. A lot of people change it over to a 520 to get rid of the less rotating mass and the drag. But, you know, when I move it fully over to a drag bite and drop it or slam it, stretch it, whatever I decide to do, we'll talk then. But for right now, this thing's in great condition. If it's not broke, let's not fix it right now. Spending unnecessary money. Riding position and anything else, you know, let me tell you about some of the things I don't like about this bike, and it's not just recently because I've ridden the Ducati. It's just with any crotch rocket, and I'll say this even about the Ducati. Everyone knows that no crotch rocket is comfortable. It's, you know, you sit far down or you're hunched over, and a lot of your weight is, you know, here in your forearms and in the palms of your hand because you have to lean over all the time. So no real shocker there to anyone that has a crotch rocket that's owned crotch rockets their whole life. The seating position between the two, it's not really too different. You do definitely sit lower on the BMW than you do on the Ducati. You sit a little bit higher up, but the tank and the reach is much longer on the Ducati rather than this bike. So it's a different feeling going into the turns and when you're in the turns and exiting the turn. And I said a lot in comparison about that in my other videos, so definitely guys check that one out as well. Another thing now with technology in these two, they are significantly the Ducati is significantly newer, and with newer technology, you know, just things evolve. You know, this isn't the first bike to have a quick shifter, but it's definitely one of the first to pioneer it and make it so seamless. You know, the R1 has it, and it's very good. Racing on this bike, you know, with the quick shifter, I think it's phenomenal. I think it really outdoes even the Ducati. But riding around town and clutchless shifting, the Ducati I think really does it a little bit better than the BMW. It's kind of jerky at slow speeds on the Ducati. On the BMW. But when you're rolling through those gears, it's lightning fast. And in my personal opinion, I think it's faster than the Duck. So there's, you know, a few things here or there that I like between the two, and this is another reason why I couldn't part with this bike, because there are certain things that this one does better, and there are certain things that one does better. You know, let's talk about the engine, the inline 4. You know, the inline 4 kind of versus the V4. We all know the Duck is going to make way more torque down load than this inline 4. And it does, you know, it really does. But through high RPMs, you know, this inline 4 really, really, really pulls hard up top. But also, again, this bike is significantly modded compared to a 100% bone stock bike over there. So, running forward else with this bike, you know, is maintenance, you know, normal oil changes, you know, every 2,500, 3,000 miles, really depending on how hard you're beating on the clutch, because it's a wet system clutch, how long you're really using the launch control. I've used it many times. They let you go 3 times back to back to back, and then the BMW system makes you take a break so that it's not, you know, the clutches do not get too hot and you don't burn them up. So, I mean, in all honesty, realistically, when you activate launch control and you turn this thing on, it sits on the 2-step, you let it go, you could slip it or just dump it. The wheelie control, the launch control, the rest is history, and you just keep it pinned and up 2 through 6, you know, through the quarter, through to 200 or whatever it is where you're going. So every single time, it's never failed, you know. So just make sure that if you have aftermarket levers or anything like that, there's the 2 micro switches underneath. You just got to make sure that both of those are switched, you know. That also controls your cruise control and your quick shifter. So you really have to just make sure all the electronics are in operational standpoint to really get the most out of this bike. As far as the suspension in this bike is optioned out almost entirely. It does not have one option, and that is the forged wheels. At the time when I bought this bike, I was riding it a lot on the street, so I did not opt out for the forged wheels, and they were like a $4,000 option. So I got the other wheels here instead. And I like these wheels actually a little bit better because they're gloss finish rather than a matte finish. I'm not so much of a matte finish type of guy, and I really like the gloss finish, so I kind of was leaning a little bit more towards these anyway. I knew I was eventually going to buy another motorcycle, and this would eventually become my race bike, but I still really like the gloss finish on these wheels. Yes, I know we can always powder coat the other ones and get them matte, get the matte taken off, but I'm just going to stick with these. I have no complaints. The weight savings wasn't worth the $4,000 to me at the time, so I just went ahead and stayed with these. Back to the suspension. This bike does have the DDS, the dynamic suspension. As you can see, I'll show you some of the things. The S1000 owners, you already know what this is. It's got the leveling piece for the rear swing arm here. That's also controlled by the sensors in the computer. That also works with the wheelie control. Here's it for the front forks, and you can adjust all of that information and stuff in traction control all on the fly, riding the bike, whether you're in street, slick, sport, rain, whatever it is that you really want to do. And I want to talk about rain mode because that's actually a mode that I really enjoy actually on this bike. With the suspension and the dynamic suspension, you really can soften this bike, not to like cruiser level standpoint, so like if you're riding a Harley, but significantly make it softer. So if you're doing a long haul, if you have a passenger with you and you know she's leaning over on you, you know, it really dampens the front fork so that you don't necessarily take so much of the beating within your wrist and in your chest, and that really helps. And then when you get back, you know, on the smooth road, you know, after going through all the bumps, you can stiffen it up a little bit, and whether you want to play a little bit in the turns with or without your passenger, and it really does work right. I really think that the dynamic suspension was worth every bit of extra money that I paid for this bike. And then when you step it up on the racetrack, and I also said this as well with the Ducati over there, when you step it up on the racetrack, you can really put it in slick and race mode and really, you know, tighten up the suspension so that when you want to go into those turns hard and slam on the brakes, you know, so the bike doesn't nosedive and ass doesn't lift up in the air and then take off and bike goes into a wheel, you can really adjust how the weight transfer of the motorcycle and puts the power down to the pavement so that you can go through the apex of the corners exactly where you need to go, and when you look through the corners, the bike goes exactly where you tell it to, not necessarily where the bike's deciding to go and it's oversteering and you constantly have to correct it and counter steer, or vice versa. So the suspension was definitely a major upgrade to not necessarily obtaining that on this vehicle. I really think it was worth every penny. Now, you can kind of say the same thing about the Ducati when I said that. And I'm going to jump over here real quick because most people are going to probably try and say that about this bike. And you're probably right, you know, 100%. But I bought this bike to drive more so on the street, and this one's going to live primarily on the racetrack. So I said that also in my other video, that if you're going to really track that bike, hell yeah, get the upgraded suspension, the electric suspension. You really get to dial it in a lot more than the shower suspension. But if you're going to primarily keep this bad boy on the street, save the extra $4,000 or $5,000, put some new wheels on it, get new wheels for your car, a new supercharger, you know, something else, whatever it may be. Buy your girlfriend something nice, go on vacation, whatever. It's not so much really needed, you know, and that all comes on the S model. This, you know, this bike option all out, you know, it really gets up there. It pretty much doubles the price of the standard cost of the motorcycle. And I believe when I bought this bike, the base price of this bike was like $16,000. And it pretty much, you know, all optioned out. You can kind of pretty much figure out where it is, you know, depending on where you live and what dealership you buy it from. You may be able to save $1,000 or $2,000 here or there. But when you start adding in all the extra bells and whistles, it jumps up really quick. But let me tell you, it's worth it. And if you're going to buy, here's one thing I always tell people when they ask me, hey, Rob, you know, how is this bike comparison to the R1 or the ZX10 or the GSX-R 1000 or the CBR, you know, the big four? And I'm going to tell them, and I'll tell you like I tell everybody, if you're definitely considering buying an S1000 and you're not going to put the options on it, don't buy it. Save your money and buy the R1 or buy the GSX-R, the CBR, the ZX10, whatever it is that you like, because this bike at a base model isn't really going to outperform or do anything that's going to be different than the other big four, and the other big four are significantly cheaper. Now, when you start adding in options and stuff like that, you know, you're pushing 25, you know, almost 30,000, or even depending on if you do get wheels and stuff like that, you're well over 30,000 for this bike. Now you're in a whole different breed of a category of a motorcycle, you know, versus maybe 12 to 15 out the door for some of the other ones where you're, you know, 25, 30 for this one. So if you're not going to get the options, stick with the other ones. And I had them. I had two GSXR 1000s, a Hayabusa, 600 chassis, 750 motor swap in the frame and everything. So I know all about, you know, having the other ones. And ridden all the other bikes of my friends that have had the R1s and the R6s. You know, I like them all. But if you're not going to option out this bike at all, it's not really worth the extra coin or the $4,000 or $5,000 extra that they're upcharging you just for the base of this for you to wear the BMW badge when you can get one of the other big four, and it's probably going to outperform this thing on the track. It might be faster in a straight line, but that's pretty much it. But you want to go fast in a straight line, buy a ZX14 or buy a Busa and put a turbo or something, or put some nitrous on it, you know, you can go 8s, you know, no problem. What's some other quick ownerships about this thing? Another thing I want to talk to you guys about is about rain mode. Rain mode is actually one of my favorites, and when this came out, the electronics were kind of like state of the art at the time. And we all know that, and this is not really new information because this bike is actually 3 years old. But rain mode actually reduces a lot of the power, which has been out on a lot of bikes. But with the lean angle sensors and how this, in the track control, and how this thing really auto corrects you going around a turn, and for you to, you know, trust the electronics, it does really take you some time to trust the electronics, like the ABS and the traction control and things like that. You're going around a turn, and we all know if you're going to pin the throttle around a turn, especially when it's wet, you're going to slide out from it right underneath you, and you're going to fall and bust your shit and dump your bike. Of course, but not with this thing. You put this thing in rain mode, the traction control and everything works perfectly. You nail this thing around a corner, this thing will cut the power, pretty much damn near stand you straight up until you get traction. You go on about your way. It's a gorgeous feeling. So when you do get stuck with this thing, when you have, you know, tires like this that are currently on it so that you can ride in the rain, or if you get stuck in the rain, you have a little bit more confidence in your ride, you know, so that if you do decide to drag your knee in the rain, yes, I have. Yeah, call me crazy, whatever, but you're not susceptible as falling as you would be if you didn't have any of those aids. And that's one of the wonderful and the most wonderful things that I really enjoy about this motorcycle is its traction control and stability control. We will figure out exactly if it's better than the old duck over here, you know. How does it compete with that drift mode that's in this thing? And that thing is kick-ass, but that's another video to come, so stay tuned, y'all. In spite of anything else, you know, brakes are good. I actually had to replace the brakes, and I've had multiple track days on this thing. And I look at the inspect the brake pads all the time. They have more than 50% still left 3 years later. So great job, BMW. Great job, Brembo. This thing stops on a dime and give you 9 cents back. So, but if there's something else that I missed, you know, please let me know. As far as the mods, the bike has taken very well to it. You can see some of the other videos with the bike being on the dyno. I think it was like 100 degrees or something with even the air intake temperature, and the thing still performed extremely well. So I have no complaints. Anything that I've done to it is just overall really vastly improved it, especially the ceramic coating of the exhaust. And it's really cut down on a lot of heat that, you know, that we all hate that we get in the groin area here from riding these things. So no complaints, you know. Really, if I had to sell the bike or part with it today, you know, if someone asked me, hey, you know, what's the thing that you absolutely hate about the most, and I'd probably have to just say it's just the crotch rocket because it's uncomfortable. But there's nothing I really hate about this bike after 3 years of ownership. And if I don't really hate anything about it now, I don't think I'm really going to hate anything about it later. So if you're looking for an S1000, at the time, you know, before maybe that thing came out, this was the bike to have. This was the bike to be, in my opinion, and that's why I've kept it. And I don't keep things. You know, I trade car shit every 6 months, you know. And I've had this bike for 3 years, and I couldn't part with it, and it has done absolutely wonders. And I look forward to the next 3 years with it, unless BMW comes out with that new S1000RR, which we keep seeing those spy photos of. And if it's as bad as they say it is, you know, you already know what it is. You know I'm gonna get it. So we'll see what's going on. But I hope that's been some 3-year review for this bike. And if you're buying an S1000 or in the market for one, go check one out. Go get a test ride on one. You know, you can pick them up used for a good price, you know, especially all optioned out, and you're really going to be impressed. So I hope this has been informative. I hope you all have enjoyed this video. I hope that I've answered any of your questions. If I didn't answer any of your questions about an S1000, feel free to comment below. I'll do more than happy and be more than happy to try and answer it as best as possible. But that's going to conclude it here for today's video. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you here for another episode here on the Speedbug channel. Take care, y'all.